My wife laughed at dinner and said, "You're so naive. You trust everyone. That's pathetic." I said, "Maybe you're right." Then I hired a private investigator with the naivety she mocked. 3 weeks later, I had photos, receipts, and hotel records. When I presented everything to her lawyer before she could file first, her mocking smile disappeared. I, 41 male, have been married for 11 years. Together for 14 total. 2 kids, ages 8 and 6. A house with a mortgage I've been paying down aggressively since we bought it. A career I've built from the ground up in supply chain management. Nothing glamorous, but stable and decent paying. And apparently, according to my wife, I'm pathetically naive. That dinner was 3 weeks ago. We were at a nice restaurant for our anniversary, 11 years together. I'd made reservations 2 months in advance because this place books up fast. Got her favorite table by the window. Ordered the wine she likes, a specific Pinot Grigio she discovered on a trip we took before the kids were born. I thought we were having a genuinely good time. Then she got a text. Smiled at her phone in that way people do when they're not just reading words, but connecting with someone. Typed something back quickly. Laughed to herself, soft and private. "Who's that?" I asked. Casually, not accusatory. Just making conversation the way married couples do. She looked up at me with this expression I'd never seen before in 14 years. Contempt, maybe, or pity. Something that made me feel about 2 inches tall. Hard to describe unless you've experienced it. You really want to know everything, don't you? Who texts me, where I go, why I think about every little thing. She shook her head slowly, still wearing that strange smile. "You're so naive. You trust everyone. It's actually pathetic." I sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth, pasta cooling on my plate. "What? Nothing. Forget it. Just eat your dinner." She went back to her phone like I wasn't even there. But I couldn't forget it. The way she said it. The casual cruelty in her voice. Like she'd been thinking it for a long time and finally let it slip out because she'd stopped caring about my feelings. Or maybe because she wanted me to hear it. "Maybe you're right," I said quietly. "Maybe I am naive." She didn't even look up from her screen. Home. We finished dinner in near silence. Drove home in complete silence. She went to bed early, claiming a headache. I sat in my home office until 2 a.m., staring at the wall, replaying that moment over and over like a broken record. Here's the thing about being called naive. It makes you start paying very close attention to everything you've been ignoring. Over the next several days, I noticed things I'd apparently been too pathetically trusting to see before. Her phone was always face down now, angled away from me. Password changed from her birthday, which I'd known for years, to something completely different. She'd step outside to take calls, claiming it was work stuff that was too complicated to explain. She started going to the gym 3 times a week instead of once, except her gym bag never smelled like sweat, and she'd come home freshly showered even though she hated the gym showers. The work trips that had quietly increased over the past year. The new lingerie I found in her drawer that I'd never seen her wear. The way she'd started criticizing everything I did, how I loaded the dishwasher wrong, how I parented too softly, how I breathed too loud when I slept. Everything about my existence seemed to irritate her. Monday morning after that dinner, I made a phone call. Found a private investigator through a lawyer friend who owed me a favor from a business deal years back. The PI was a retired detective. Discreet. Professional. Looked like somebody's friendly grandfather. $2,500 retainer plus $150 per hour for active surveillance. "What are you looking for specifically?" he asked during our first meeting, held at a coffee shop across town. "The truth. Whatever shape that takes. And if it's not what you want to hear, then at least I'll know. Right now, I'm living in uncertainty, and that's worse than anything." He nodded slowly like he'd heard that answer 1,000 times from 1,000 worried spouses. "Give me 3 weeks." I gave him 3 weeks. Kept playing the naive husband at home. Smiled when she criticized my cooking. Didn't question when she said she had to work late on a Friday night. Kissed her goodbye when she left for her conferences with a suitcase that seemed awfully small for business travel. It was the hardest acting performance of my life. Every day, pretending I didn't suspect anything. Every night, lying next to her and wondering who she was really thinking about. but I needed her to keep believing I was the trusting idiot she'd mocked at our anniversary dinner. The PI's first report arrived at the end of week 1. PDF attachment to an encrypted email. Subject has been observed meeting with an unidentified male at various locations during stated work hours. Observations include extended lunch at upscale restaurant, 2.5 hours, afternoon visit to Marriott hotel property, duration, 3 hours, 17 minutes, and evening drinks at wine bar, 1.5 hours. Physical contact observed throughout. Hand-holding, embracing, kissing. Photographic evidence attached. I opened the photos with shaking hands. My wife, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in at least 2 years. Holding hands with a man I didn't recognize across a restaurant table. Kissing him passionately outside a hotel entrance, his hands on her waist like he owned her. The naive husband everyone pitied was looking at documented proof of exactly what he suspected. Week 2 brought more evidence. Hotel receipts obtained through legal means. She'd been using our joint credit card for some of the room charges, apparently too confident in my ignorance to even bother hiding it. Restaurant bills. Uber receipts showing trips to addresses that weren't her office, our home, or anywhere she should be. Week 3 delivered the final piece of the puzzle. The PI had identified the man through various methods. Her co-worker, senior position at her company, actually her direct supervisor, married himself with 3 kids ages 10, 7, and 4. They'd been meeting regularly for approximately 8 months based on the pattern of charges and documented communications. 8 months. Our 10th anniversary had been 7 months ago. She'd been actively cheating on me before, during, and after that celebration of our marriage. Now here's where the naive husband got strategically smart. I knew she was planning something. The increased hostility, the constant criticism, the emotional distance that felt deliberate rather than accidental. These were classic signs of someone building a mental case to leave. My lawyer friend confirmed it. Spouses who cheat often try to file first to establish themselves as the victim and gain leverage in negotiations. She thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She didn't realize I'd already flipped the entire board. I compiled everything methodically. The photos, the receipts, the hotel records, the timeline showing her stated whereabouts versus documented reality. Had my own divorce attorney review it all and prepare a filing package. Then I did something she absolutely never expected. I contacted her chosen lawyer. She'd mentioned casually a few weeks back that a friend recommended a great family attorney for someone in her office going through a difficult divorce. I'd noted the name, filed it away in my memory. The naive husband pays attention to small details. I called that attorney's office, made an appointment for a consultation, walked in, sat down across from a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, and explained that I wanted to discuss retaining her for my upcoming divorce proceedings. The attorney looked confused. "Sir, I believe there may be a conflict of interest. Your wife contacted our office earlier this week regarding potential representation." "I know," I said calmly. "That's exactly why I'm here. I'm not asking you to represent me. I have my own counsel already. I'm asking you to review this evidence before you decide to take her case." I slid the thick folder across the polished desk. Photos, receipts, hotel records, the PI's comprehensive report with timelines and documentation. The attorney's professional mask slipped slightly as she flipped through the pages. Disbelief, then understanding, then something that looked almost like respect. This is remarkably thorough documentation. My wife called me naive at our anniversary dinner 3 weeks ago. Said I trust everyone and that it's pathetic. She was right that I trusted her. I don't anymore. And I wanted you to see exactly who you'd be representing before she walked in here with whatever carefully crafted victim narrative she's prepared. Long pause. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. However, I should inform you that this doesn't automatically preclude. I understand completely. You can still take her case if you choose. But now you know what you're dealing with. And so will every other divorce attorney she approaches, because I prepared copies for all of the major family law firms in our area. I left the folder with her and walked out without looking back. That evening, I filed first, served her papers at her office the next morning at 9:15 a.m. in front of her co-workers. including the married man she'd been sleeping with for 8 months. The look on her face when she realized what those papers meant. The mocking smile from that dinner table was absolutely nowhere to be found. Update 1 week later. The fallout has been intense. Thanks for all the support and messages on the original post. Some people said I was cold for serving her at work. Fair criticism maybe. But after being called pathetic for trusting her while she was actively sleeping with her boss, my capacity for warmth had pretty much evaporated. Here's what's happened since the papers landed on her desk. Day 1 after service. Complete radio silence. She didn't come home that night. The kids were already at her parents' place for a previously scheduled sleepover, so I had the house to myself. Half expected her to burst through the front door screaming. Instead, nothing. Complete void. She stayed at her sister's place apparently. Day 2. The flying monkeys descended. Her mother called first. I answered because she's the grandmother of my children, and cutting her off entirely felt unnecessarily cruel. What have you done? How could you humiliate her like this at her own workplace? Did she tell you why I filed? She said you've been cold and emotionally distant for months, that you drove her away from the marriage. Did she mention the 8 months of hotel rooms with her married supervisor? Or the photos I have of them kissing in parking lots? Or the credit card receipts she charged to our joint account? Dead silence on the line. Then, shakily, "You're lying? My daughter would never do something like." I have a licensed private investigator's complete report, dated receipts, time-stamped photographs. Would you like me to email the documentation to you directly? She hung up without another word. Her sister called about an hour later. Different approach, trying to sound reasonable and diplomatic. "Look, I know things are messy right now, but maybe you two could sit down and actually talk through this. Think about what's best for the kids." I'm thinking about the kids. That's precisely why I'm not dragging this process out longer than necessary. She cheated for 8 months with a married man who has 3 children of his own. The longer this divorce takes, the worse it becomes for everyone involved, especially our kids. She says it was a mistake, that she still loves you, that she wants to work things out. Funny how that realization arrived after she got caught and served with papers, not during the 8 months of hotel visits and secret lunches and lies. Her sister didn't have a response to that. Day 3, she finally came back to the house, claimed she needed to pick up some things. I was civil about it, offered to give her space and privacy to pack whatever she needed for immediate daily use. She seemed surprisingly subdued, red-eyed from crying, exhausted-looking, diminished somehow. Then she started talking. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry, but we can work through this together. Marriage counseling, individual therapy, whatever it takes. I'm willing to do the work. You called me pathetic 3 weeks ago for trusting you. You said it while actively texting the man you were sleeping with. There's nothing to work through. I didn't mean it. I was stressed from work. I was confused about my feelings. You were texting your affair partner at our anniversary dinner and then mocking me for being naive enough not to notice what was happening. That's not confusion. That's contempt." She tried a different manipulation angle. "Think about our children. Do you want them growing up in a broken home with divorced parents? They'll grow up knowing their father had enough self-respect not to accept betrayal. That lesson matters more than the illusion of an intact family built on lies. You're being needlessly cruel about this." "No, I'm being clear. Take what you need tonight. I'll have the rest of your belongings boxed up by the weekend." She left with 2 suitcases and her laptop bag. Posted nothing on social media. She was at least smart enough to know that would backfire. But her friends weren't nearly as careful. I started receiving messages from people I barely knew, acquaintances from her social circles. The narrative being constructed and distributed was that I was controlling and emotionally abusive and had driven her into another man's arms through neglect. My response to anyone who reached out was simple and consistent. I have a private investigator's documented report showing 8 months of infidelity with her married boss. Happy to share the relevant portions with anyone who wants the actual facts instead of her story. Most people stopped asking after that. But here's where the entitlement really started revealing itself. Her attorney, a different firm than the one I'd visited, obviously sent over the initial settlement demands. She wanted primary physical custody of both children. The house, which I'd put the $80,000 down payment on using my inheritance and had been paying the mortgage on exclusively for 11 years. Spousal support of $4,500 per month for 7 years. 60% of all retirement assets. Child support calculated at the maximum state percentage. My lawyer laughed out loud when he reviewed it. She's living in a fantasy world. But this is typical aggressive opening positioning. We'll counter with reality and let the judge decide. Then came the accusation that genuinely made my blood freeze. Day 5. I received a call from a detective at the local police department. Wanted to ask me some questions about allegations made by your wife regarding domestic concerns. My stomach dropped through the floor, but I forced myself to stay calm and composed. Asked what specific allegations. She claims you've been emotionally abusive throughout the marriage. Controlling behavior. Monitoring her communications and movements. She says she's genuinely concerned for her physical safety going forward. The irony was so thick, I almost laughed despite everything. The woman who'd been cheating for 8 months was accusing me of monitoring her communications, which I only started doing after she literally called me pathetic for trusting her. Detective, I have legal counsel, and I'm happy to cooperate fully with any investigation, but I'd like my attorney present for any formal questioning. I should also mention that I have extensive documentation showing my wife has been conducting an affair with her supervisor for the past 8 months, which is the actual reason I filed for divorce. I'd be happy to share that documentation with you as evidence of her motivations for making these allegations. The detective's tone shifted noticeably. That's useful context. We'll be in touch to schedule something more formal. I called my lawyer immediately after hanging up. He wasn't remotely surprised. Classic tactical maneuver. Muddy the waters. Make you look like the aggressor instead of the victim. Create reasonable doubt about who actually wronged whom. But you have the documented evidence. That's what ultimately matters in court. I spent that entire night organizing every text message, email, and document that demonstrated our marriage had been normal, even genuinely good, until she began her affair. Photos from family vacations. Messages of us planning date nights and weekend activities. Evidence that I was a present, involved, non-controlling husband and father. If she wanted to fight dirty, I would be completely prepared. Update 2, 3 weeks later. The legal battle has intensified significantly, but so has my determination to see this through properly. Here's the current situation. The police interview happened last week. My attorney was present throughout. I brought the complete PI report, printed and organized with tabs for easy reference. Showed them the detailed timeline. Explained that the only monitoring I conducted was hiring a licensed professional investigator after my wife openly mocked me for being naive enough to trust her, which was the first moment I genuinely suspected something was wrong. The detective reviewed everything carefully, asked follow-up questions about specific dates and times and locations. Then asked directly if I had any history whatsoever of violence, threats, or controlling behavior. Never. Not once in 14 years together. You could check every record. Interview neighbors, friends, family members, coworkers. There's absolutely nothing there because there was nothing to find. At the end of the interview, the detective closed their notebook and looked at me directly. I want to be straightforward with you. These allegations will be noted in our records. But based on the documentation you've provided today, there doesn't appear to be any grounds for further investigation or action on our end. We may follow up if new information emerges, but for now this appears to be a contentious divorce situation rather than a domestic safety concern. They left. My lawyer clapped my shoulder. That's as close to case dismissed as you're going to get at this stage. She dramatically overplayed her hand with those false allegations. But she was far from finished. Not even close. Next came the custody evaluation process. In our state, when parents have a significant dispute over custody arrangements, the court appoints a neutral evaluator to interview both parties extensively, observe their interactions with the children, and make professional recommendations to the judge. The evaluator came to my home on a Tuesday afternoon, interviewed me for nearly 2 hours about my parenting philosophy, daily routines, involvement in the kids' lives. then stayed through dinner and homework time to observe me actually interacting with my children in our natural environment. She asked detailed, specific questions about my involvement, school events and schedules, medical appointments and histories, daily routines and responsibilities, the kids' friends and teachers and activities. I had answers for everything, because I'm genuinely involved in my children's lives. I know their teachers' names and parent-teacher conference dates. I know their pediatrician's phone number by heart. I know their favorite foods, their bedtime routines, their friends' names, their fears and dreams. According to my lawyer, the evaluation session with my wife went rather differently. She apparently spent considerable time explaining why my controlling behavior had systematically limited her involvement in the children's daily activities over the years. The evaluator then asked specific factual questions she couldn't answer. What medication was our youngest prescribed for seasonal allergies? What was our eldest's current reading level according to her last report card? When was the most recent parent-teacher conference, and what was discussed? She didn't know the answers, because she'd been too preoccupied with hotel rooms and secret rendezvous to actually attend to those details. The evaluator's preliminary report came back recommending primary physical custody with me, joint legal custody for major decisions, standard visitation schedule for her, every other weekend, Wednesday evenings, alternating holidays, and half of summer break. Her lawyer immediately filed formal objections, claimed the evaluator demonstrated clear bias against working mothers, requested a completely new evaluation by a different professional. The judge reviewed the objection, reviewed the evaluator's detailed report and methodology, and denied the request. That's when her entire family really escalated their involvement. Her father, who I'd genuinely always gotten along with throughout our marriage, called me at 10:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night. "Son, I really need you to reconsider what you're doing here. Think about what this is doing to our entire family. Sir, with genuine respect, your daughter made these choices. Not me. She made a mistake. Human beings make mistakes. You're systematically tearing apart everything we've all built over one mistake. 8 months of continuous deception isn't a mistake. It's a decision made repeatedly, consciously, every single day to betray and deceive someone who completely trusted her. I'm not going to pretend otherwise or minimize what actually happened. You're going to deeply regret this when you're old and alone and the children barely remember who you are. Good night, sir." I hung up and blocked his number. Felt genuinely terrible about it. He's been a good man in most ways throughout our relationship, but I refused to be emotionally manipulated by her family. Her mother sent an actual physical letter to the house. 3 handwritten pages of manipulation carefully disguised as grandmotherly concern. The choice highlights included: children need their mother's presence more than their father's, especially at these formative ages. Everyone knows that. A woman's emotional needs are complicated. Men simply don't understand the pressures modern women face trying to balance everything. You were always buried in work, always prioritizing your career. What exactly did you expect her to do with all those empty hours? I gave the letter directly to my lawyer. He filed it as evidence of the family's dismissive attitude toward my role as a parent. Then the calculated financial games began. I discovered she'd been the one paying certain bills from our joint checking account for years, or so I'd always believed and trusted. Turns out she'd quietly stopped paying several of our shared household expenses about 6 weeks before I filed, right around exactly when she started consulting with that divorce attorney. The mortgage payment had been made because it auto-drafted from my personal account, but utility bills had lapsed into delinquency. Credit card minimum payments had been missed. Insurance premiums had gone unpaid. She was deliberately trying to tank our shared finances so there would be less marital assets to divide, and simultaneously positioning me to look financially irresponsible if I failed to catch it in time. I caught it, paid everything current immediately from my personal account, documented every date, amount, and her previous consistent payment history going back years. Showed my attorney the crystal clear pattern. She'd been paying these bills reliably and on time for our entire marriage, then suddenly stopped paying anything right when she started planning her exit. Classic dissipation of marital assets, my lawyer explained. She tried to strategically drain shared accounts while positioning you as the negligent party. But you have all the records showing the pattern. This significantly helps our case. Final update, 6 weeks later. It's finally done. The divorce was officially finalized yesterday afternoon. I'm still emotionally processing everything, but wanted to close this chapter out properly for everyone who's been following along. The final hearing wasn't the dramatic courtroom confrontation you see in movies. It was a conference room with beige walls and bad fluorescent lighting. 2 lawyers across from each other, a professional mediator at the head of the table, and 2 people who used to genuinely love each other, now sitting on opposite sides, methodically dividing up 11 years of shared life. She came in looking polished and professional. Expensive blazer, perfect makeup, like she was attending an important business presentation, not the legal dissolution of her marriage. I noticed she was wearing the pearl earrings I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. Bizarre sentimental choice, given the circumstances. Her opening position, presented through her attorney, remained stubbornly absurd despite everything. She wanted the family house because the children needed stability and familiar surroundings, and she would naturally be their primary caretaker going forward. She wanted significant spousal support because she'd sacrificed substantial career advancement opportunities for the sake of the family. She wanted 50-50 custody minimum, preferably primary physical custody. My attorney calmly and methodically laid out the documented facts. The PI's comprehensive report. 8 months of thoroughly documented infidelity with her married supervisor. Hotel receipts charged directly to our joint credit card. The custody evaluator's professional report strongly favoring me as primary custodian. Her demonstrated inability to answer basic factual questions about our children's daily lives, education, and medical needs. The calculated financial manipulation, bills deliberately left unpaid to drain marital resources. The false allegations to police that had been effectively dismissed. The mediator's carefully neutral expression shifted subtly as the evidence mounted. Not dramatically. She was a professional, but there was a slight tightening around the eyes. A glance toward my wife that lingered just a beat longer than necessary. Her lawyer attempted to minimize and redirect. The marriage clearly had significant problems well before any affair occurred. My client was emotionally neglected and essentially abandoned within her own marriage. My lawyer countered smoothly. We have text messages from the week immediately before the affair began. Messages from her, telling her husband explicitly how happy she felt, how grateful she was for their life together. If there was neglect or abandonment, she concealed it extremely well. He read one specific text aloud. I'd almost forgotten I still had it saved. From 8 months ago, just 2 days before her first documented hotel visit with her supervisor. Thanks for making dinner tonight, even though you were exhausted. I know work has been absolutely crazy, but you always somehow find time for us. Love you so much. She wrote that, sent it to me with a heart emoji, then met him 48 hours later at a hotel downtown. The mediator looked at her directly. Do you dispute the documented evidence of the affair? Long, uncomfortable pause. Then, very quietly, no, I don't dispute it. Do you have any concrete evidence supporting the claims of emotional neglect or abandonment you've alleged? Documentation? Contemporaneous written accounts? Witnesses who observed this dynamic. Even longer pause. Her voice barely audible. It's not something you can easily prove or document. It's about how I felt inside the marriage. But you have no actual evidence? Nothing beyond your subjective feelings now. After the affair was discovered. No. The remainder was cold, clinical negotiation over numbers and schedules. I won't bore you with every detail, but here's where we ultimately landed. Custody, primary physical custody awarded to me. Joint legal custody for major decisions about education, healthcare, religion. She receives every other weekend Friday through Sunday, Wednesday evenings for dinner, alternating holidays, and half of each summer break. The children stay in their home, their school district, their established routines and friendships. The house, I keep it. She receives 30% of the equity we've accumulated during our marriage, approximately $85,000, paid out over a 3-year period through monthly installments. It hurts my finances significantly, but I can ultimately manage it. The kids don't have to move. Retirement accounts. Split exactly 50-50 for everything earned during the marriage years. Fair by legal standards. Not what she demanded, but genuinely fair. Spousal support. $1,800 per month for 3 years. Not the 7 years and $4,500 monthly she initially demanded. My attorney argued successfully about her earning capacity and pointedly noted that her affair partner earns substantially more than I do. The court imputed reasonable potential income based on her education level and professional experience. Child support. She pays me. Not a large amount, $400 monthly, but symbolically meaningful. The primary custodial parent receives support from the non-custodial parent. That parent is me. She signed the final documents with visibly shaking hands. Wouldn't meet my eyes even once. Her attorney whispered something quietly to her, and she nodded stiffly, jaw clenched tight. As everyone was gathering their things to leave, she finally spoke to me directly for the first time since mediation began that morning. You didn't have to systematically destroy everything we built. I stopped walking toward the door, turned around slowly. I didn't destroy anything. You made choices. Deliberate, conscious choices. For 8 months. While I was being naive and pathetic for trusting you completely. All I did was thoroughly document those choices and let the legal system function as designed. Our children are going to hate you someday. When they're old enough to really understand what you did to their mother. When they're old enough, they'll understand that their father respected himself enough not to accept betrayal and humiliation. And I hope that lesson serves them well in their own lives and relationships. I walked out of the conference room. She stayed behind with her attorney, probably discussing whatever appeals or modifications might come next. I genuinely didn't care anymore. The drive home felt surreal. The house was empty when I arrived, kids still at school for another 2 hours. I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, just staring at the familiar walls. The kitchen where we'd made 1,000 meals together over the years. Where I'd actually proposed to her late one night after she'd badly burned pasta, and I'd told her I didn't care about the ruined dinner because I wanted to eat burned pasta with her for the rest of my life. Naive. Yeah, I was genuinely naive. I believed completely in her. I believed in us. But here's what I've learned through all of this. Being naive isn't the same as being weak or pathetic. And trusting someone fully doesn't mean you're obligated to keep trusting them after they've definitively proven they don't deserve that trust. The kids came home from school that afternoon like any other day. I made their favorite dinner, tacos with all the toppings they like. We watched a movie together on the couch, all piled up with blankets. They asked when Mom would be visiting next. I told them she'd be there Friday after school for her weekend. They seemed okay with that answer. Kids are more resilient than adults usually give them credit for. I've got a long, difficult road ahead still. Legal fees consumed most of my savings account. The equity payout to her will stretch my finances thin for years. Co-parenting permanently with someone who betrayed you isn't exactly enjoyable. But I have my home. I have my children living with me. I have my fundamental self-respect intact. She wanted to leave the marriage, so I let her, just not on her carefully planned terms. The mocking smile from that anniversary dinner still flashes through my mind sometimes, usually late at night. The way she looked at me across that restaurant table, like I was a fool deserving of contempt for trusting her with my whole heart. She wasn't entirely wrong. I was a fool, but I'm a fool who learned. And ultimately, I'm a fool who won. At least, as much as anyone truly wins in a divorce. Thanks for following along through this entire difficult situation. Time to figure out what comes next for me and my kids.